Hello, Mark Terry. You're the
Hello.
president of the Neko Harbour Entertainment company,
That's correct.
and you're here to publicise a film.
Yes.
Could you tell us a little bit more about this?
Sure. The film is called The Polar Explorer, and it was invited here in partnership with the United Nations Environment Program to basically show the delegates the latest scientific information that's coming out of the Arctic and Antarctica.
What kind of information are we talking about?
Well, it's the latest scientific research done at both polar regions, and in particular, the melting of the sea ice and the land ice is what's quite crucial these days. In previous years, we were concerned with the melting as the warming temperatures are turning the ice into trickles of water. But the real problem we have now is that the tongues of these glaciers are now receding, and they are exposing the rock underneath the glaciers. And what that's having an effect on is creating warmer rocks, which in turn creates an endothermic reaction and is warming the glaciers from underneath. So now instead of just trickling water, we're having big chunks of glaciers breaking off and sliding into the world seas, thereby contributing to the rising sea levels.
How do you know this isn't a short-term thing? Because this kind of data has to be gathered over a long period of time to actually be significant, doesn't it?
Yes, that's right. But it was just this past August where we saw a manifestation of this take place in the Arctic, and that was in Greenland. The Petermann Glacier, you might have heard of. It broke off a piece of ice that was 5 times the size of Manhattan, and that slid down the rocks of Greenland and into the Canadian Arctic waters. And so the expedition that the film that I'm showing here went on actually went there and did a landing on this glacier. We planted an ice motion beacon so we can chart its course and see how quickly it's melting as well.
What kind of scientific influence do you think your film is going to have?
Well, it's actually quite important because many of the scientists that we interviewed in the production of this film are quite concerned that their message is not reaching the policymakers. And there's kind of a disconnect between the scientific world and the media and the general public and the governments. So what they're quite excited about is a project such as mine, because they're allowed to have a voice, and I kind of interpret what they're saying into a language that the policymakers will understand, thereby making their research and their very important data more accessible to the delegates here at the conference.
Are you working at all with the IPCC?
The
Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change?
No. Indirectly through some of our partners, but not directly. I'm an independent film producer and working more as a reporter, interviewing the scientists that are focused on the polar regions and bringing their research to this conference.
Okay. And what results have you had from showing your film around to people?
Oh, it's been extremely positive. I'm very, very excited about the conference this year. I was in Copenhagen last year with another film, again in partnership with the UNEP. That was called the Antarctica Challenge of Global Warming. And we had about 25 screenings there and made a bit of an impact, but it was very, very crowded and complicated in Copenhagen, as you probably remember. This time it's a bit more accessible to the various delegates. So we had very good presentations in Mexico at the pavilion there, and the European Union at the Ecuador pavilion with the climate registry, and to several ministers of the environment from Canada and other politicians related to environmental portfolios in the United States and Mexico. And their reactions were very supportive. They were quite surprised to hear some of this information, and seeing the film really kind of drives it home more than any speech can. You know, a picture's worth 1,000 words, and moving pictures are worth 1,000,000 words.
You're focusing on adaptation.
Yes.
On the grounds that it's too late for mitigation.
Yes, it is. Because this is happening now. There probably would have been more time, 20 to 40 years perhaps, but now that these big chunks are being added, it's not a trickle effect anymore. It's like taking your cocktail that's filled to the top and dropping an ice cube in. Everything's going to overflow instead of just a couple of drops. So we have to act very quickly now.
It's tricky because you're really, on many levels, you'll be preaching to the converted.
Yes.
Yeah. How do you make sure that the obstacles, the people that are standing in the way, actually sit up and listen to what you're saying?
Well, it really helps having film as the medium, because in addition to me quoting scientists, that only reaches a certain level of understanding and provides us only a certain level of impetus to act. But when they actually see it in the film, this glacier that is so large, the very first film footage ever taken of it, we had to be about 2,000 feet high in the air in a helicopter just to get it all in frame. And when they see that thing that doesn't belong there, because you can see that it doesn't belong in that environment. It's a tabular iceberg, which is actually more of an ice island because of its size. That really kind of hits home. Then they tend to understand what we're talking about. So hopefully it'll make a difference.
I wish you all the luck in the world.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Okay.